Imagine a time when the fate of Rome hung by a thread, threatened by both external enemies and internal crises. In this uncertain scenario, a man emerged whose vision and determination would not only save the Republic, but also transform it into a military power feared throughout the ancient world. Gaius Marius, a general whose tactical genius and revolutionary reforms would forever change the way Rome waged its wars. But who was this man, and how did he manage to forge an army that many considered invincible? Gaius Marius' reforms weren't just administrative changes. They redefined the concept of war and laid the groundwork for a new kind of Roman soldier, a professional warrior, relentless and loyal to his general. Through his leadership, Marius didn't just win battles. He shaped the future of Rome's military might. In this video, we're going to delve into the true story behind this undefeated general and his unbeatable soldiers, exploring how his military reforms and bold strategies created a force that many enemies feared and few dared to challenge. If you want to understand how one man transformed the fate of a nation, get ready to uncover the legacy of Gaius Marius and the rise of a new era of Roman power. The Republican crisis, the scenario before Marius. Imagine Rome at the end of the 2nd century before Christ, an apparently invincible republic, but internally corroded by political, social, and military crises. Although victorious in many campaigns, Rome was exhausted from prolonged wars that drained its resources and shook its stability. The threat of external enemies like the Cimbri and the Teutons was growing, and the defeats suffered by the Roman legions on the battlefield spread fear and uncertainty among the citizens. Internally, the situation was no less chaotic. Social inequality was increasing, with wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, while the majority of the population lived in miserable conditions. Confidence in the senatorial elite's leadership was diminishing, and the military recruitment system, based on land ownership, was collapsing. The small landowners, who traditionally formed the backbone of the Roman army, were being forced to sell their properties, making them ineligible for military service and weakening the ranks of the legions. In this context of crisis, Rome urgently needed a new military approach that could face the internal and external challenges. The lost battles, such as the disastrous defeat at the Battle of Orazio in 105 before Christ, where the Romans suffered one of their greatest losses, showed that the Republic needed a drastic reform. The stage was set for the arrival of a leader capable of reinventing Rome's military structure and restoring its glory on the battlefield. That leader emerged in the figure of Gaius Marius, a man who was not just a skilled general, but also a reformer with a clear vision of how to transform the Roman army. Marius, originating from a plebeian family, brought a unique perspective and unwavering determination to correct the mistakes of the past and prepare Rome for future challenges. His actions would not only save the Republic at a critical moment, but also lay the foundation for the creation of a professional army, shaping Rome's destiny for centuries to come. The rise of Gaius Marius, from soldier to visionary general. Gaius Marius was born in Arpinum, a small town in central Italy, to a family of humble origins. Despite not belonging to the Roman aristocracy, Marius showed exceptional military ability and ambition early on, setting him apart from his contemporaries. His talent was recognized during his participation in military campaigns, especially in the Jugurthine War, where he distinguished himself as a courageous leader and brilliant strategist. Gradually, Marius gained the trust of the soldiers and the Roman people, who saw him as an alternative to the traditional aristocratic leadership. His rise to power was driven by both his success on the battlefield and his political skill. In 107 before Christ, Marius was elected consul, a remarkable achievement for a man of his origin, breaking through the barrier of an elite that dominated Roman politics. With power in his hands, he was ready to implement the reforms that would forever change the Roman army. Marius initiated a series of military reforms that would revolutionize the structure and effectiveness of the legions. He abolished the land ownership requirement for enlistment, allowing any Roman citizen, regardless of wealth, to join the army. This change not only expanded the recruitment base, but also created an army composed of men who saw military service as a career and a chance for social advancement. Additionally, Marius reorganized the legions, introducing rigorous standards of training and discipline. He understood that Rome's strength depended on a professional and well-trained army capable of facing any threat with determination and skill. Under his leadership, the soldiers were no longer just armed peasants, but professional warriors, fully dedicated to Rome's cause and loyal to their general. These reforms laid the foundation for the creation of the invincible legions that would later lead Rome to the height of its military power. Marius' military reforms, the creation of the professional soldier. Gaius Marius' military reforms represented a radical transformation of the Roman army, converting it from a force primarily composed of temporary citizen soldiers into a permanent, professional war machine. One of the most significant changes was the abolition of the property requirement for military enlistment. Until then, the Roman army was made up of small landowners, whose loyalty was more tied to civic duty than to long-term military commitment. Marius, by opening the ranks to the proletariat, those without property, not only increased the number of available recruits, but also cultivated an army whose survival and prosperity depended directly on their victories. These new soldiers, without any other source of income or livelihood, were entirely dependent on their pay, the spoils of war, and the promises of land made to them at the end of their service. In doing so, Marius created a legion composed of men who saw in their general not just a leader, but a patron, someone who could secure their future. This personal loyalty to the general, rather than to the state, marked a significant shift in the power dynamics within Rome and paved the way for the rise of military leaders with unprecedented political influence. Another crucial reform was the restructuring of the legions, which were now organized into smaller and more flexible units called cohorts, instead of the old maniples. Each legion was divided into 10 cohorts, each consisting of about 480 men, which allowed for greater mobility and effectiveness in combat. This new organizational structure enabled the Roman legions to better adapt to different types of terrain and tactics, offering a significant tactical advantage over their enemies. In addition to structural changes, Marius instituted a rigorous training regime for his soldiers, ensuring they were physically prepared for the demands of combat and mentally toughened to endure the hardships of military campaigns. He emphasized discipline, endurance, and unit cohesion, creating an army that not only followed orders, but was capable of acting with efficiency and autonomy in high-risk situations. This new type of soldier, fully dedicated and disciplined, would become the standard of military excellence that would define Rome in the centuries to come. The unbeatable legions, how Marius transformed the Roman army. With Marius' reforms, the Roman army came to be seen as an almost invincible force, capable of facing and defeating powerful and numerous enemies. The legions now made up a professional army, where every soldier was trained to fight with lethal skill and where discipline was maintained at any cost. This transformation allowed Rome to recover from past defeats and begin building a reputation for unstoppable military power. One of the first tests of this new strength came with the war against the Cimbri and the Teutons, Germanic tribes that threatened to invade Italy. Previously, these groups had inflicted devastating defeats on Roman forces, causing panic and despair in Rome. However, with Marius' new legions, the tide turned. Marius implemented his innovative tactics, using the flexibility of the cohorts and the tenacity of the professional soldiers to confront these threats in a series of crucial battles. In 102 before Christ, at the Battle of Aquae Sextiae, Marius demonstrated the effectiveness of his reforms by crushing the Teutons, resulting in a victory so complete that few of the enemies survived. The following year, at the Battle of Vercelli, he faced the Cimbri with equally devastating results. These victories not only saved Rome from an imminent invasion, but also solidified Marius' reputation as one of the greatest generals in Roman history. Under Marius' command, the legions became more than just an army. They transformed into a national institution, a symbol of Roman power and resilience. The new military structure he created not only restored the security of the Republic, but also laid the groundwork for the future conquests that would expand the Roman Empire throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. Marius' legions were not just unbeatable on the battlefield. They were the embodiment of Rome's new military power, forged by the vision and leadership of a man who knew how to turn crisis into opportunity. The confrontation with the Cimbri and the Teutons, testing invincibility. Gaius Marius' reforms were quickly put to the test on the battlefield. The Cimbri and the Teutons, Germanic tribes that had migrated south into Europe, posed a direct threat to Rome's security. These groups had already inflicted devastating defeats on the Romans, creating a sense of dread among the population and Roman authorities. The invasion of these tribes was one of the greatest challenges Marius would face as a military commander, and Rome's survival depended on his ability to neutralize this threat. Marius prepared his legions with unwavering determination. He knew that the numerical superiority of the Cimbri and the Teutons could be a decisive factor, but he trusted in the discipline and training of his troops. Moreover, Marius demonstrated extraordinary strategic ability by choosing battlefields that favored his tactics. By positioning his forces in locations that forced the enemy to confront the Roman legions under unfavorable conditions, he was able to neutralize the numerical advantages of the Germanic tribes. At the Battle of Aquae Sextii in 102 before Christ, Marius orchestrated one of the greatest victories in Roman history. He prepared an ambush that caught the Teutons off guard, annihilating a large portion of the enemy army and capturing or killing their leaders. This victory was not only a demonstration of the strength of the new legions, but also proof of Marius' tactical genius. With the Teutons defeated, Marius turned his attention to the Cimbri, who still posed a significant threat. In 101 before Christ, at the Battle of Vercelli, Marius once again showcased his military mastery. The Cimbri, confident in their superiority, were quickly disillusioned when confronted with the effectiveness of Marius' legions. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the Cimbri army, and once again, Rome was saved by a stroke of military genius. These victories solidified Marius' reputation as an invincible general and showed the world that the Roman legions were more powerful than ever. The impact of the reforms, political and social changes in Rome. Gaius Marius' reforms had a profound impact not only on the army, but on the entire social and political structure of Rome. By opening the army to the poor and transforming it into a professional career, Marius inadvertently altered the dynamics of power in Rome. Soldiers were now directly loyal to their general, not to the Senate or the Republic, which gave military leaders new and dangerous political influence. This shift in soldiers' loyalty had far-reaching consequences. Generals like Marius came to hold considerable power, capable of challenging the traditional authority of the Senate. This created the conditions for future civil wars, where military leaders would use their legions as instruments to achieve political power. The relationship between the army and the state would never be the same, and the Republic began to see the first signs of its decline as military power became concentrated in the hands of a few. Additionally, the professionalization of the army brought new opportunities and challenges for Roman citizens. Soldiers, many of whom were poor and landless before enlisting, now had the chance to improve their economic and social standing through military service. The promises of land and wealth after service attracted thousands of recruits, turning the army into one of the main forces of social mobility in Rome. However, this new reality also brought tensions. The reliance on the army as a permanent career meant that soldiers expected substantial rewards for their service, and failure to meet these expectations could lead to dissatisfaction and, eventually, rebellion. This new dynamic became a double-edged sword for Rome, offering both power and vulnerability as the army became a central player in Roman politics. Marius' reforms, therefore, were a double-edged sword. While they strengthened Rome militarily, they also sowed the seeds of future political instability. They marked the beginning of a new era, where military power began to eclipse civil authority, setting the stage for the transformations that would culminate in the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. The legend of Marius, general, politician, and hero of the Republic. Gaius Marius was not just a victorious general. He became a legendary figure in Roman history, both for his military achievements and his political impact. After his victories against the Cimbri and the Teutons, Marius was elected consul 6 times, an unprecedented feat in the Roman Republic. This record not only reflected his popularity among soldiers and the general population, but also his skill in navigating the turbulent waters of Roman politics. Marius was a shrewd politician who knew how to use his outsider status to position himself as a defender of the people's interests against the senatorial elite. His plebeian origins gave him a connection with the lower classes, and his military reforms, which opened the army ranks to the less privileged, solidified his support among these groups. He became the champion of the populares, a movement that sought social and economic reforms benefiting the lower classes of Roman society. However, Marius' career was also marked by controversies and fierce rivalries. His relationship with Lucius Cornelius Sulla, who was initially his subordinate, evolved into a bitter enmity that would eventually trigger a civil war after Marius' death. The power struggle between Marius and Sulla highlighted the tensions that Marius' reforms had exacerbated. The rise of generals who could challenge the Senate with the backing of their loyal legions. Despite these controversies, Marius' legacy as a hero of the Republic remained strong. He was seen as the savior of Rome in its darkest moments, a leader who not only won decisive battles, but also reformed the army in a way that ensured Rome's security and prosperity for many years. His legend lived on long after his death, influencing generations of military and political leaders who followed in his footsteps.